Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to Production Modeling Corporation's web presentation. Today's topic is Why MODAPTS, a simplified time study. This will be presented by a program director at PMC. His name is Bob Toy. My name is Brian. I represent the marketing department at PMC. I will be the person handling all the background stuff. If you have any problems, I recommend using the Q&A feature. If you have any issues with sound or your viewing experience, please let me know and I'll do my best to help you. There will be a live Q&A session that I will host at the end of this presentation, so please hold all your questions to the end. But feel free to use the Q&A feature to get those out ready for you if you see something during the presentation you want to comment on. But with all that, I'd like to turn things over to Bob to begin our presentation. Bob, take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome everybody to our presentation today. As Brian said, this presentation will be about MODAPTS, which is a simplified time study. Before we get started, though, I'd like to talk a little bit about PMC, what PMC is and what we're about. PMC is an operations and improvement consulting company. Our USA operations have been around since 1979. We've done well over 7,000 projects. We've done it with well over 700 clients, 150 diverse employees throughout the world now. And we're also Autodesk Solutions provider. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a few of the bigger clients that we've had throughout history. And over on the left side in the top, you can see where we have many of our branches at. That being said, what does PMC do? PMC does quite a few things. We like to say that we do everything under the sun of industrial engineering, from reality capture to the basic core industrial engineering, to simulation modeling, safety and quality, geospatial services, jig and fixture design, and even steel detailing. I'll give everybody a minute to take a look at the screen here. So today we're talking about work measurement. We're talking about MODAPTS. We're talking about time studies. So why time? What is time? What is time study? Time is a measure of work. It brings knowledge. Through this knowledge, factual decisions and improvements can be made and control exercised. What do we want to know? We want to know the number of workers. We want to know the number of machines. We want to know what our lead time is. We want to know our overall production schedules. We want to set production goals. We're going to do all this through work measurement. Work measurement is the application and techniques designed to establish the time of qualified and average worker to carry out the specified job of a defined level of performance. It's real important that we see what this says right here, that it's a qualified average worker. So we're not talking about the new trainee that we just hired and we're working with, nor are we talking about the super worker who can do everything in half the time that any other worker that we have. We want the everyday qualified average worker that we can count on, who comes in every day and does a great job for us. That's what we're looking to. That's who we're looking to set the measurements with. There are several different types of techniques that we can use. First one is real common, is a stopwatch time study. Stopwatch time study, I highly recommend to never do, especially to set standards, because really is all a stopwatch is doing is telling us how good an employee is at their job. It really doesn't tell us what the work standard is. One employee who's trained better than the other, or one person who cares more, might do a better job, might do it faster. While another person who's just trying to get through their 8-hour day and get paid by the hour might just be slower. Nor maybe they just don't know as much about it. So we really don't want to utilize stopwatch time study because we're really just measuring the person at that point. We can also do production studies, which is looking at the overall production, how everything is flowing through the line. We can do work sampling, which is when we stop and we look at what's happening in a certain area right now. And that's really just a moment in time. The best way to really go about it, though, is really to use PMTS techniques, which are predetermined motion time systems. And these systems include MTM, most, work factor, STD, data, and MODAPTS. Now, though there are several different types of PMTS techniques, today we're really only going to be looking at the MODAPTS. PMTS, which is predetermined motion time study, is good as assigned to specified basic motions. So really, it breaks down the human body. It breaks down the motion from your fingertip to your toes, and it breaks it down to tell us how long it takes for each one of these movements to happen. The best basic motions of any activity is established first. Times are assigned to these basic motions from a catalog, so these are all predetermined. These times were applicable to normal operators. As I said before, they're not really for the Superman, nor are they for the new trainee. Therefore, there's no need of a rating. We're not rating the employee. We're not telling the employee they're doing a good job, nor are we telling them they're doing a bad job. For those reasons, it's very non-intimidating. The first PMTS was placed in the public domain was MTM, method time measurement, in 1948. All the rest of the PMTS methods were really based off of MTM. So why do we use PMTS? It's a universal approach. It's fast to apply. It's adequately accurate. It's easy to understand and easy to learn. There's minimum paperwork to it. It's a multi-level system. You get consistent results every time. It encourages method development and it encourages improvements. If you look off to the right, you can kind of see how it breaks down basic movement. We talked a little bit about the PMTS techniques, but just to touch on them again, MTM, method time measurement. Then we have different types of MTM, MT1, MTM2. There are other MTMs also that I'm not really going to mention here because they go on and on. There's most, there's MODAPTS, which is what we're talking about today, which means modular arrangement of predetermined time standards. There's work factor, and there's ease. There are other ones also that we haven't mentioned, and many more that I probably just don't know. So let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about MODAPTS. As I said, MODAPTS is a modular arrangement of predetermined time standards. It was developed by Mr. Heidi. It was introduced in 1966. It's widely accepted PMTS technique. The rating factor is eliminated. It's an accurate system. It encourages methods of development. And it has very reduced cost of certification. So that being said, nearly anybody can be certified. And it doesn't cost very much money to get certified, which is something you can work with PMC to get certified if you like. There's very few activity types. It's very easy to understand and use. There's index values for a specific activity and not for a range of activities, resulting in an improved accuracy of standards. So that being said, I'm looking at a single activity, such as closing my hand, instead of closing my hand and moving everything around. Simultaneous activities can be easily identified and assigned. So if I'm doing something with both hands, I have one hand grabbing a bolt while the other hand is grabbing a wrench. Those are simultaneous activities. It can be used for clerical and administrative activities. It can also be addressed. Cost of training certification and recertification, as I stated, is quite low. Methodology: determine the correct and efficient work method. Divide the work method into elemental details. Every elemental detail to be identified by a two-part code. The first part is an alphabet component, which indicates the type of activity. So on the example to the right, you'll see the M, which indicates movement. The second part indicates a number or index value, which is a 4. The 4 indicates how many mods there are. The index value is called a mod. One mod is equal to 0.129 of a second, so basically 1/8 of a second. What is the MODAPTS philosophy? All activities are classified to three basic classes of elements. Movement, which we just looked at. This class refers to movement through space done by the finger, hand, arm, shoulder, or trunk. This class must be followed by a terminal class. You will always have a movement before any other terminal classes, but you must always have a terminal class that follows your movement. So what is a terminal class? There's activities that are done at the end of the movement. They are in close proximity to the things being worked on. So maybe I'm going to move my hand, open my hand, close my hand. Those are terminal. Auxiliary activities that are also performed from the finger, hand, arm, shoulder, and trunk system. So those are what we call the auxiliary. The use of MODAPTS. Calculate the time it will take to complete a given job when working at a standard pace. The pace is set for an 8-hour day. When you begin to look at what's going to happen after 8 hours, when you begin to work overtime, 10, 12, even 14-hour days, it becomes very difficult to do any type of predetermined time standard because of the efficiency of the worker really begins to drop. It determines the best method, compares apples with apples. It's good to use for line balancing, job costing by providing direct labor minutes, the basic building block for developing standard work instructions and process improvement. While creating a MODAP study and doing the time and doing the report, automatically you'll get a very, very strong outline of work instructions, which could be very easily translated and given to each line worker. So why choose MODAPTS? As we stated, it's not very complex. It uses integer values. It's method sensitive. It encourages method improvements. It highlights ergonomic concerns. Simulation adaptable. Inexpensive, no royalty fees. More consistent operation analysis. Possibility of controversy is reduced. Is embraced by most labor unions. And based on normal body movement and values based on one mod. Time study versus MODAPTS. Why would we use MODAPTS versus stopwatch time studies? Stopwatch required can be very intimidating. MODAPTS uses no stopwatches. Stopwatch performance rating required. Unresolved disagreements. There's no performance rating with MODAPTS. The stopwatch is not ergonomically sensitive. MODAPTS can identify basic ergonomic issues. Stopwatch is not method sensitive, where MODAPTS is very method sensitive. Cost implementation of stopwatch versus MODAPTS, excuse me. And I do have to say again, I don't believe in stopwatch, but I know that is one of the very common ways that companies do today to do their time studies utilizing stopwatch. For 15-minute cycle, a minimum of 10 to 15 cycles would have to be observed to develop standard data. Another hour would be assumed by the application engineer to write up the study. For MODAPTS, only one cycle would need to be observed. For MODAPTS, every minute of cycle, 20 minutes would be required for the application to write it up. Thus, MODAPTS would be less costly to implement waste management. What's the summary we talked about today? MODAPTS is widely accepted. MODAPTS is easy to learn and apply. It takes about 1.5 to 2.5 days. MODAPTS is reliable and consistent. MODAPTS is accepted around the world. And MODAPTS can be used in nearly any industry. Now I'll turn it back over to Brian for any questions that may have came in while we were talking. Brian?
Yep, thank you, Bob. And we did have a few questions come in throughout the presentation. So we'll get started with those, but please, if you have any questions that you directly want to ask Bob, please utilize the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and I'll make sure that we get to those. So Bob, the first question that we had come in was, why does a stopwatch study exist if it really doesn't give the information needed?
Well, like I said before, a lot of times people utilize stopwatch study because they don't really know that these PMTS studies exist, nor have they ever been trained on it. So they'll utilize a stopwatch study thinking that this is the accurate and the right way to do it. A second reason that they exist is you're not always timing humans. Sometimes you're going to be timing a machine. Sometimes you're going to be timing a robot. And when it comes to machines and robots, the best way to really time them is with a stopwatch because they will not be intimidated. There's no performance judging on them, and the time is always the same unless there's a glitch in the system. I hope I answered that question.
Yep. Thank you, Bob. And another question we had, how long does it take to perform a MODAPTS study?
That's a difficult question to answer. MODAPTS studies will vary based on the cycle time, based on the job time, and based on the activities being performed in each work cell. However, a basic rule of thumb, for every 5 minutes of human activity, it will take approximately 5 hours to do the coding. So it's kind of a one minute to 1 hour ratio, if that's how what you're asking me. Of course, it takes time to do the analysis of the person on the job, and then it takes time to write everything down. The reason it takes this long to do it is because while you're watching them move, as they move their hand, as they move their arm, as they move their feet or their trunk, you need to move your head back down, write something down, then lift back up. And while you were doing that, you've missed several actions. So you may have to watch it again. You may have to see it again. So the best way to honestly do a MODAPTS study is to record the operations and view it at your desk. A lot of times, because of different restrictions within different sites, you're unable to view it. So if you're doing it on site, which is what we kind of automatically assume is going to happen, it's kind of a 1-to-1. If you're doing it off site, it's really a matter of 1 minute to 5 minutes. It's not very much. I hope I answered that question.
Yep. Thank you, Bob. Another question we had come in, is this similar to most? And then it says question, event in most has index numbers.
It is very similar to most. MODAPTS was actually derived from a mixture of MTM and most. It was very, very simplified. Most is a little more, I'm going to say, pinpointed. It gets down to a little more of the nitty gritty, where MODAPTS goes down to 0.129 of a second. Another thing you might notice is that when you talk about the three major categories of PMTS, such as most, MTM, and MODAPTS, it's funny how they break up. You'll see a lot of MODAPTS in the United States. You'll see a lot of most in Asia, and you'll see a lot of MTM in the European countries. Now, that's not to say that they're exclusive to those countries. However, that is where they are most popular at.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Another question we had come in, how should one take a decision on what method to use between most, MTM, or MODAPTS?
I would say it's whatever you're trained best at. However, MODAPTS is easiest, MODAPTS is fastest, and MODAPTS will give you just as good a results as anything else. If you need to get more accurate than 0.129 of a second, then I would say give me a call and we'll talk about it. We'll see the best way to go. PMC can do most, PMT can do MTM, though I always recommend MODAPTS because I've really never seen a situation where it needed to be more accurate than 0.129 of a second.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Another question that came in, how much does it cost to implement in a medium scale manufacturing industry as a standard?
Tough question. It depends on how many work cells we're looking at and what the cycle time for each cell is and what the human work factor for each one is. If I took a rough guess um, at a medium factory, so we'll say a medium factory is 200,000 square feet, maybe 250,000 square feet. And let's say there's 40 work cells and 100 employees. I would guess that would be right around the $60,000 mark. That's a very high estimate, but I don't want to mislead you. We can easily dial that number in to an exact number with talking a little bit further. So once again, you're invited to email me, contact me, or call me.
All right, thank you, Bob. I don't see any further questions. Oh, nope, another one popped in. So that next question we had, is MODAPTS designed to factor in simultaneous motions like bending and grasping apart at the same time?
It is. So how simultaneous motions are handled, whichever motion requires the most mods is the one that you count because they're both happening at the same time. So you don't want to add to the cycle time because it's really the same time, but maybe bending over to pick up a bolt. The bend over portion of it takes longer than the actual picking up of the bolt. So really the only part you're going to count is the bending over. However, you will note, there will be a note as the simultaneous motion about the picking up bolt portion. So you're going to capture it, though you're not going to count it, if that makes sense.
Okay, and then another question is, can you refer any books to understand more about this?
There's not a lot of books available. However, there is a society. It's called the MODAPTS Society. And you can go online and look them up and you can join the society. And through the society, you can get their newsletters. And I guess you could probably even request some of the training material. They normally won't give it to you unless you're an actual trainer. But that's not to say that that's always the same. The best way to get any books on it is to actually take the class. The class is fairly reasonable. I think it's less than $1,000 to take the class. And you'll get all the material available on MODAPTS.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Another question we had, what is the best way to get trained on MODAPTS so we can use the tool at our workplace?
There's several ways to get trained on it. And PMC offers on-site training at your location, or you can come to our location to get trained. As I said, it's about 2.5 days of training. The first 2 days are training. The last day is the exam, which takes about 3 hours to take the exam. And I say 3 hours, it sounds intimidating. It's very simple. It's an open book, and that's what takes so long. Is just kind of looking through your book. And there's a third way you can do it, which is online at your own pace. I have never taken the online. I've taken MODAPTS training a few different times. I'm trying to become a trainer myself. So because of that, I have to do different types of courses to see how different instructors do it. Though I guess if you're self-driven and you're able to stay focused for 2.5 days straight, the online could work for you. In my case, I'm a little bit too busy with the rest of my work to stay focused on that. Though it is a self-paced, you could take up to a year to get it done. But I can't imagine how you can remember a year later what you learned on the first day. Um, and it's no less expensive to do it online than it is in person. It's just you save travel costs or whatever the case might be. But yeah, you can get trained either by us or online.
All right, thank you, Bob. And I think you kind of answered this one already, but they said how long is the training duration?
Yeah, the training itself is 2 days and then about a half a day or less if you're fast. I mean, if you could test on an hour, It's 2 days and 1 hour. The days are about 6 hours long, depending on your instructor. They go by really fast because it is really interesting training. If you enjoy learning, this is something that you'll enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Another question we had, based on PMC's experience, which industries tend to utilize MODAPTS the most?
Anything that is repetitive. So anything that, like assembly line, whether it's automotive, whether it's firearm manufacturing, whether it's fast food processing. We've done MODAPTS in nearly every industry, from the hospital to the banking industry, automotive, aeronautics, live food processing, such as chickens and cattle. As long as the motions are repetitive, that's where it's best to do it at. It really was designed for the automotive industry, though its applications are extremely wide.
All right, thank you, Bob. Another question we had, is it integrated in any DES software?
Nope. We've designed at PMC, we've designed a very intricate Excel workbook that we utilize. And as you're trained and as you work with it, you'll design your own workbook also to suit your needs. Of course, ours you're welcome to utilize also. There's no copyright on it or anything. We would just give it to you.
All right, thank you, Bob. Another question, what is the cost of training, and is there any special software required once we start using the tool?
Like I said, the cost of training, I believe, is less than $1,000 per person. There is no special software, just Excel. And you don't even need Excel because you can do it all manually. The only tool you might need is a calculator.
All right, thank you, Bob. I think we're finally full up on the questions. So thank you all for participating, but I'm going to close the Q&A session now. Thanks for all your feedback, and thank you, Bob, for answering all those questions.
Okay.
Good to see you. Like Bob said, if you have any further questions or you'd like to, get in touch with us at PMC, you can obviously reach out to Bob at his email. Or if you want to email PMC directly after you take some time and, provide us with what you want, you can also email us at hello@contactpmcorp.com. But with that will end today's webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for your participation and your attendance. We look forward to seeing you at another one of our webinars or potentially working with you. So with that, have a great day.
Thank you, Brian. Bye.